How's it going, guys? So today we're gonna talk about Path of Exile 2 trade website. Before I start, I would like to mention that I'm using extension called TFT Trade. It's not mandatory, but I like to use it because I like to save my searches. So for example, earlier today I was looking up gloves. I needed these gloves with 2 jewel sockets because that's corruption. Usually can have only one, but the range can go from like 10 to 20 exalts, right? So if I want to snipe and gloves with decent reduced attack speed, I need to be quite vigilant. So I have 2 options. If I'm currently behind my PC, I can have active live search. So that means if there is any glove with the criteria that I picked, it will make a sound like toot, and it will pop up the message that someone posted recently the item. This is pretty much why when you underprice an item, people know immediately, I mean usually bots, that you posted something and they message you immediately. That's why usually you get spammed if you post something for quite cheap. So for example, if I save it, I just add extra folder and I add current search. Now there's multiple other ways how to use it. You can like pin it, so you can save it. In POE 1, you would be able to save it on your right hand side while using the pin, but it's currently not fully updated to POE 2, so we have to wait until the patch will hit. Now, while we're here, I'm just going to explain the online only. If you swap it to NA, you will search the item even if the people are offline. Now, I usually use this just so I can compare what the prices should be. So, for example, if someone would buy out all the gloves for the 10 and let's say 15 and 17 exalts, and there would be only the one for 20, I would not waste my currency because I know the bad rolls on these gloves would guarantee between 10 to 12 exalts. Now let's start at the top. I believe this is pretty easy to understand. One thing that you might use is the item level, but people won't use it that often because crafting is pretty hard in this game and you cannot do anything deterministically. But for example, if I wanted to make a new weapon, let's say wand, and I want to have the highest spell damage possible, which starts only from item level 80 and higher, I can look up a wand that is item level 80 and higher and non-unique, for example. I can look up the base for my crafting. So this way, for example, if I get something with +3 to cold, and it would not have any prefixes, I know for sure that if I X-slam, I have potential to hit something like this. The odds are low, but it can happen. Now let's talk about equipment filters. They are pretty easy to understand. One thing that is noteworthy is the empty rune sockets. So for example, if I'm looking for 2 rune sockets on this special unique glove, because that can happen only when you corrupt them, I can just press 2 in here and I can look up these gloves. You can do it on pretty much everything. So for example, if there's some unique armor, I'll put 3 in, but it only will look up the ones that are empty. If I want to equip in, let's say, magic find or something like a magic rarity, I can do it this way. Sometimes if someone would already equip in, for example, magic rarity in both of these, I would not be able to say it because it only says empty rune sockets. Now, one thing that you might use quite often is the requirements, mainly while you're leveling your alts. So for example, if I want amulet with a +1 minions, if I would search it up, it would find quite high levels and I would not be able to use it on my early levels. So what I usually do is I would come here and go, let's say max level 5. This way I would find only amulets that are required level 4 and higher. So that way I can equip it while I'm leveling up my alts. I used it exactly the same way for my bow. If I would have a look and search up a bow with maximum level of 18, and I would search it up based on the physical damage, as you can see, there's only one similar bow for 5 exalties, and this one pretty much carried me all the way to Act 4. Now the rest is used pretty much the same ways. If I want to look up boots that use dexterity but not too much, and intelligence but not too much, I can look up certain mods based on this requirement. If I want to use new boots and I have my intelligence very low, I can set it up so it would search only for items that are in that range. Next are Waystone Filters. I don't use them at all personally when it comes to miscellaneous. Only time I use them is usually when I go corrupted no. When I look up, for example, boots that are unique and I don't want them corrupted, I want to corrupt them myself, I just select no and search so I can look them up and corrupt them myself. When it comes to stack size, if I want to buy a big stack of, let's say, Chaos Orbs or anything that stacks like Catalyst, I would put up minimum stack of 10. However, because we have a trait inside the game, I don't believe that it's used that often. What you can also do is look up for gems with the gem sockets. So, for example, if I put 5, I might be able to find the gem that I'm looking for cheap because people used all of their resources to make them higher sockets, and I can just try to snipe it for cheap. When it comes to the trait filters, this one is actually pretty big. I used it very, very often. When I was looking up war staffs, I put certain criteria to look it up, but I only wanted one that are exalted orbs free and cheaper, which is very, very handy, especially because I crafted them for profit. I didn't want any of these, which I'm going to explain later on, and I would be able to find only the special weapons in this window. If I wanted to craft this one, this would be amazing because it's R8 and an attack speed. So I would just buy it, craft it, and maybe sell for profit later on. Now let's go to the stat filters. And as you can see, we have and, not, if, and count. We have also weighted sum, but I personally don't use it very often, so I'm not going to go too much into the detail. Not means if I look up a certain item, so for example, if I have a look again, on my search for my staff, I put not, cold damage, fire damage, lightning damage, and accuracy. I've done it personally so I can slam it later on, but if there's some mod you don't want to have on your weapon, you just put not. Really self-explanatory, and is used, I want all of these mods. If I want to have accuracy, if I want to have life, all I'm going to put in, the item is going to have. Now next on the menu is count. What I'm usually doing is if I'm looking up jewels, which are quite hard to find on the market, as you can see, I'll put count and let's say 3. So that means the jewel that I would look up will have 3 mods of this pool, right? All of these are super good for my current build. And if I would press search, I would find 3 mod jewel based on my search. Now, sometimes it pops out only 2 because I believe the website is slightly bugged because I selected too many options, but I believe you get the gist. Now, last one is the weighted sum. I personally like to use count if I want to have ring with 3 suffixes and it has fire, cold, lightning, dexterity, and strength, and only 3 of these can be up there with a minimum roll of 20. It would find it a little bit easier. Rather than using a weighted sum, I would only select these resistances. So if I put 70, that means the combined roll of all of these is 70. So if I search it up, I found a ring that has 38 and 40, which is more than 70. There is 37, 38, which is more than 70. In some cases, it could be 3 lower rolls. I cannot find any right here, right? This is combined of 80, but I personally like to use the count a little bit more because it's a little easier, especially now that I can put in attributes that I can later on swap from int to dex. And that's pretty much everything when it comes to the bulk exchange. This is pretty much just the in-game trade, but a little bit harder to use, because people usually don't reply when you try to trade them. So I personally would ignore this one. And that's pretty much everything. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.